Welcome to the Franchise Masters podcast, where aspiring entrepreneurs learn what it takes to find, buy, and build successful franchise businesses. My name is Dru Carpenito, and I'm your host as we dive into these fascinating behind-the-scenes stories of people who have used surprising franchises to create massive success. I'm glad you're here. Let's dig in. Welcome to the Franchise Masters podcast. I am joined by a guy that I've known for a long time, who's been in franchising since he was a pup and has done all kinds of amazing things. Erik Van Horn is here to talk about his story from owning franchises and now running masterminds for franchisors, all kinds of stuff. It's gonna be a fun conversation. So Erik, welcome, my friend. How are you?
Dude, what was your name again?
Yeah, don't forget the little people, right? Way back in the day.
Oh no, man, we go way back. Good friends, and I was just telling you before we hit record, like, I absolutely love what you're doing out there. I follow you online. I know you, so it's even more fun to follow you. I'm so glad when you started to do the podcast because, like, you're a natural to do it. So happy to be on.
Yeah, well, I think we've come full circle, but you have been a big inspiration to help get this thing out and with a lot of other things. So I appreciate it, man. But yeah, so enough about that. Let's talk about you, man, because you have such an amazing story to share because you've done so many different things, and you've been on all sides of franchising, and you're up to some really cool stuff now. But would love to just kind of hear a little bit more, so the listeners can hear a little bit more about you and your story and what you're up to, and we're gonna dive into a lot of that stuff. So,
dude, I'll make it real fast, kind of the backstory. And then we'll get up to present day quickly, and we can dive back into any of the story whenever you want. But I was going to go to law school in Chesapeake, Virginia, decided against that because I was not a great student, and law school takes being a great student to survive that. And then I realized attorneys worked their butts off, and I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to work smarter and not tie my wage to an hourly rate. So I started a lawn business, mowing lawns, planting flowers and things like that. And I was in front of this lady's house, older lady, planting grass, digging out old flowers, planting new ones. And she came out with some tea and said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" basically. And I said, "A real estate investor. I'm going to be a real estate investor," because I was getting my real estate license at the time. And I was working with my broker there, and he invested in a lot of different property. I had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I had not downloaded. We didn't download things at that time. I had purchased Carlton Sheets, like billion CDs on how to buy houses, no money down. So I confidently told her I was going to be a real estate investor. And she said, "Oh, we did that 20 years ago." So through the course of the next hour, I left her house with an option contract to buy her condo at the beach. And I gave her $100 as like earnest money. And I was able to assume her mortgage because it was an assumable mortgage for zero money. Like I had to pay for closing costs. And so I called up my parents. I said, "Hey, I got a deal for you." And they're like, "That sounds too good to be true." And I said, "If you don't do it, my new broker, Gary, said he would do it with me. I'll give you 50% of the deal if you pay 100% of the closing costs. And when I get the money, I'll pay you half of your closing costs." And so that's what we did. And the lady was so nice, Dru. She's like, "Erik, you seem like a nice young man. We want to do this, but our broker right now is making money every month on us, and we want to sell it. He's not selling it for us. So we want to help you." Wow. And that's what they did. And I sold that to my parents shortly after I bought it. And I think I made about 20 grand on that. And now I had never had 20 grand in my bank account in my entire life. I was like early 20s. And I rolled that into my first franchise, which was Liberty Tax. Bought a couple franchises, opened them, had some success, not making money, but had some success in terms of numbers. And then bought the area development for Liberty Tax in Austin, Texas. I took that from 4 locations to 42 locations. as an area developer. And over that time, I had acquired 12 locations at the retail level, store level as a franchisee, sold all of that in over a 9-year period. And that's when I started the consulting business and started to buy more franchises as a franchisee and as an area developer. And then continued to do that until I helped start a franchisor with some mutual friends of ours, and then exited that early on, and then continued to double down on masterminds that I have for franchisees, franchisors, passive investors, and then starting to do more advisory work for franchisors currently. And that's been a ton of fun. So that's the quick down and dirty, man.
That's awesome. So like right now with your advisory work, I mean, you have such a unique perspective, right? Because you kind of have like a franchisee first perspective, I'm assuming, and from the front lines and the happiness and the profitability of the franchise owners and how that can, if that flourishes, how much easier the franchisor's job really becomes. But that's cool. So you're working with some emerging brands right now? Or are they more mature brands?
Yeah, working with some emerging brands, and realized, talking to a friend of mine, Roland Frazier, a couple of years ago, and he does a lot of advising for equity. And I said, I want to do more of that. And so my podcast, I started putting it out there that I'm going to advise for equity. And then all of a sudden I got a message that says, hey, let's talk. I've got this cool concept. We're looking to fill out our advisory board. And so I had a conversation with Bennett over at Dirty Dough Cookies. And he's like, yeah, we want you. I'm like, I want to be in. So within a month, I was an advisor with options for equity in that brand. And it's been really fun too, because I've been able to make some strategic introductions, give some advice, like put guardrails on, like watch out for this, don't do that. And then a lot of it is, this platform with a Facebook group, with a podcast and social media presence like you, and I'm able to share things about my portfolio brands, and it drives attention to them and it provides leads to them. So it's been a lot of fun. I've had offers for more to advise them for equity, and I've turned some down and I'm about ready to acquire some more in terms of coming into my portfolio of brands.
You've been through the ringer and had a tremendous amount of success, both as a top performing franchisee of multiple brands and getting involved in the franchisor side and everything. So when you're looking at these opportunities for your advisory business, are there certain things that you're really looking for? Or like when oh my gosh, like this is a great company I want to get involved with, or are there some red flags that stick out to you as like, maybe this brand isn't one that is a fit for me to get involved with?
I want to make sure I can have an impact. And I guess first and foremost, and I was at the Springboard conference, had a number of brands and vendors come up to me to talk about advisory for equity. And one of the questions that I asked them right away, like, why do you want me? And if they want me to get in the trenches and go to board meetings and fly out quarterly and things like that, it's immediate no. Like, that's not what I do for the advisory services. I do more of that with a company called Front Street Equity Partners. And that's where I'm my business partners and I do a deep advisory, in the trenches advisory for significant more equity than what I do just for being a regular advisor. So call that in the trenches, really deep advisory with Front Street. With being a portfolio brand of mine, we're talking, they have access to me. Like, I want them to have access to me whenever they need it. For, they're looking at raising some funds, they're looking at doing this, they need some help finding some franchise development people or C-level executives. Like, I can help them with that without much effort from me. So high value, little effort from me is what I look for. So if they want something from me that's high value, little effort, I'm all in. But if they want me to, here's an example, a company that wanted a call with me, and I charged them $1,500 an hour for a call. And they said, hey, we'll pay you for 15 minutes if you fill out this form, and we'll pay you $25 an hour, which is $1,500, $25 a minute, which is $1,500 an hour. And I said, no, I hate filling out paperwork. So even for $25 a minute, I won't fill out paperwork. So that's it. Like if there's things like that they want me to do, attend meetings, travel, all of that, it's just not going to be the right fit for me from just being a portfolio brand. But then again, on the Front Street Equity Partners, like we'll spend a ton of time with them, but it's more equity and there's different payment structures for that. So really as we talk about equity, there's really two different paths. One, just advisory, and then really strategic in the trenches advisory, two different types of things.
Cool. The emerging franchisor space is so interesting, right? Because whenever a company starts to franchise their business, it's a whole new ball game. Some companies embrace it and are humble about it. Other companies aren't humble about it and show up to discovery day with quote unquote follow the process t-shirts on and expect their franchisees to just follow the process, when in reality that's just not how it shakes out, right? So as you've been in franchising, I'd love to get your opinion. Like, are there certain things that you've noticed, or like characteristics or things that the emerging franchise companies that have the amazing success, that have the franchisees that are able to replicate their business and be happy and be profitable? Are there certain things that they have that you've seen compared to the emerging franchises that might have the most amazing franchise concept in the world? They might have a ton of money behind them, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't play out like they thought it was. So like, what have you seen as to what separates the good ones from the ones that don't do as well?
I think even emerging brands, you have to have that balance of, you've got to follow the system. You got to follow our process. Otherwise you get franchisees in there like me, like I was, that would just drive them crazy. I'd be like, you're doing this wrong and you're doing that wrong. And if they would have listened to me on everything, because I was successful in one or two brands, if they would have listened to everything I said, I'd never been a franchisor, even though I'd grown bigger in my area development than most franchisors get with 42 locations, open locations. I still didn't know their industry and what they were dealing with as a franchisor. So there needs to be a level of a franchisor saying, this is the way that we're going to do it. And then balance that with, we don't know what we're doing because we're a new franchisor. I was successful in the industry with my mom and pop business that we've now turned into a franchise, or we have a couple franchise locations that are doing well, but they've got to realize that they are in a steep learning curve. So they need to balance being in this place of having a steep learning curve, and then yet still learning from their franchisees and making things better. I can think of emerging brands now that have a ton of territory sold, and they're still learning. Shoot, when I was starting the franchisor with mutual friends of ours, we knew Discovery Day. We're going to tweak Discovery Day. We do a Discovery Day, then we got to huddle up and tweak it. And collectively, we've done thousands of Discovery Days, and yet we still knew we had to tweak it. First training, same thing. Like, okay, we did this. Let's survey them to see how our initial franchisees are felt about training, and we got feedback from them. And so we told them, we're not going to implement everything that you tell us or change anything because you want to change, but we do want your open and honest feedback. So give it to us. And then we immediately change some things. We're like, oh, we need to do this. We need to add more hands-on here, less hands-on over there, start later, finish earlier, things like that. So we're not wearing them out. So even little things with this experienced franchisors, they still get it wrong. So you're on this continual learning process. And then, so I think just from a mindset standpoint, that's what they have to balance, knowing that they're going to get pushback from franchisees who think they know better. Some of them might know better, they might not. And then knowing that they're not a successful franchisor yet. So that's a balancing act. I think one of the things, so how do you mitigate some of that, or how do you accelerate through that so you can have a successful franchisor faster? And I think strategic advisory, I think bringing on board of advisors is really smart. Now, to get my attention, it's going to have, just from an advisory standpoint, introductions and kind of being the guardrails for emerging brands, it's at least 2% equity for me. Or I'm just not going to do it. And so it needs to be worth it for them. They need to see the value in that. And with that, they're going to listen to me. Or there's other people out there that know a lot about franchising, Dru, and they're happy just to be on the board of advisors, unpaid or very little equity options or something like that. And so I would start to seek out people that are really good at what they've done in franchise. Maybe they're an executive at or a C-level executive somewhere, and they can offer something. They're going to be happy with a little piece of equity. They don't need 2%. They need a little bit, or just they need to pad their resume, or they want introductions. So I think the more that you can fill your bench of advisors, you do it. And then there are going to be some brands that are like, Erik, it's worth 2, 3, 4% equity to have you on board, because I know you're going to over deliver in what you give to us and your value. And in the case of Dirty Dough Cookies, they're at 200 units sold now since December, which is a stupid metric in some ways, because solds don't mean anything, but it's also a very interesting metric in other ways, because for a brand to sell 200 locations organically is impressive. And you and I both, we know that. To sell them 200 locations through brokers is impressive. But what he did is he brought on experts, me as an expert in one area and other experts, and it's really accelerated his growth. I'm not the reason he's at 200, but I'm a small part of it. And he's making better decisions for the brand and for the franchisees because of it. So there's your long-winded answer.
Yeah, well, it's about, I mean, it's got to be about fit and expectations, but it's also about the people and who you get connected with too, right? Like how it can change not just, the company's trajectory, but also personally, right? Your trajectory. It's kind of the same thing as a franchise owner too, right? Like I've heard one of the things that you preach is go find, as soon as you get into a franchise system, be humble and go find the top performing franchise owners and buddy up to them. Be nice to them. Ask them for help, because they will help you. And they've been down the path, but you have to ask them for help and you have to earn their respect. And they're not going to just give it to you. You can't expect it. Be nice, but they will help you. Like it's amazing how if you just put in the work and then can get connected with people, whether it's inside the franchise system or in life or on the franchisor side, like how much easier it can help everybody, including yourself.
Well, I think in ways, so if you're wanting to get better as a franchisee, you're wanting to get in the in crowd of successful franchisees to learn from them, not just to be a part of the Cool Kids Club, but to actually learn from them, do something that is valuable, create something valuable that they want, whatever that is. It might even be going into, here's what I would probably do, just came to my mind. So if I'm in a franchise system where I don't really have anything to add because I'm newer in it, but there's a group of franchisees that get together and they're killing it and they're doing really well and they want to get better. And that's the purpose of them meeting weekly or monthly or whenever it is, quarterly. I would probably go in and say, hey, Dru, I know you and Andrew and, Wes and some of these other characters are crushing it at what you do. I want to be a part of your group. I know I have zero to add, but what I'll do is I'll take notes and I will, put those notes out and I'll distribute them to the group, and I won't comment or do anything. I'll just take notes just to be in the room. So do whatever you can do to get in the room. Or maybe it's like, hey, I know you guys are meeting. What are you guys talking about in the next couple months? Oh, I have somebody amazing. You're talking about guerrilla marketing. Let me bring in the guy from Orange Theory that created the orange bike thing that helped them do amazing guerrilla marketing. I don't know if you know that story, but Orange Theory was very good at guerrilla marketing because they would paint a bike orange and just kind of leave them in a city that they would go in. It would create a buzz, and then they would have a grand opening and it'd be like, oh, it's Orange Theory. So the guy that, and I think about this because I have a mastermind group of franchisees who are top performing franchisees. They wanted to know more about guerrilla marketing. So I'm like, well, a couple of my members are Orange Theory Fitness franchisees. I said, hey, I'm going to be doing a thing on guerrilla marketing. And they're like, oh, you should have so-and-so on because he created the orange bike and that whole thing for Orange Theory. So he's coming on a panel to talk about guerrilla marketing. But if you knew somebody like that, then your group wanted to talk about guerrilla marketing. Now you are connected to the guy that's done amazing things and generated probably more enterprise value for Orange Theory than, incredible amounts of enterprise value, hundreds of millions of dollars for OTF as a franchisor. So bring somebody to the table or do something to be in those rooms. So I'm a big believer of just being in those rooms. That's what changed for me. I would be listening to conference calls back in my early days 20 years ago, and I'd hear franchisees talk about what they're doing from a marketing standpoint. Back then it was Liberty Tax, and I never did a tax return, but I knew how to market, or at least I thought I knew how to market. I was still learning. And I remember the plan was go deliver 50 donuts every morning. And then, that's the marketing plan. And then you would hear somebody come on the conference call and says, hey, we're having amazing success. We have lines out the door. We're doing so well. We never thought business could be this good. And here's what we're doing. We're delivering 150 donuts a morning. And this is how we're doing it. And this is how we're building relationships. And this is how we're not just leaving them places, but we're engaging with somebody, and we're doing business to business, also people to people marketing. And this is how we're doing it. I'm like, wow, I thought I was busy at 50. I need to 3X it. So I did. And then I started to do it the way that they did it. Cause I could have easily said, I'll just do 150 donuts. Well, no, you go into a business, you don't look at the gatekeeper, the secretary that's grumpy. You look at the person that's in the cubicle that's smiling, that wants some donuts, and you directly engage with that person. And then you set the tone, and now you have easy access to have a conversation with people in that building or in that lobby area. So it's learning from the best people, and we all hang out together.
Really? Yeah, there's like it's like the Bill Belichick coaching tree of like the Liberty Tax, tree and franchising. There's been so many
I know for sure. We're friends. You're friends. You and I have mutual friends that they were better the people that from Liberty Tax were better franchisees than me. They're amazing franchisees. They're better than me. They probably didn't do 150. They probably did 300.
Wow. Yeah. Just knowing you and just kind of watching the success you've had. I mean, you've done a great job at, I don't want to use the word, evolving, right? In terms of just like never accepting where you are as the top of the mountain. You just keep finding new ways to do more things, break through new ceilings and stuff like that. But, I know you've put a lot of work into figuring that out. And so I was curious, like, as you look back at the success you've had and kind of where you are now and all the things you've done, like, have there been like certain defining moments that you look back on and you're like, whoa, like, that one conversation got me thinking down a certain line, or introduced me to this certain person, or whatever it may be. Like, are there certain things that happened in your life or career that just kind of you can point back to and be like, yeah, like that was a defining moment, the moment that set off this catalyst of events that, helped me get into something new or have success with something new?
So I followed people that were outside of franchising. I followed Gary Vaynerchuk. I followed people that were not in the franchising world, that were more in the marketing world. I remember being at a franchise conference years ago, and I would do videos. I was known as a video guy. I was made fun of as a video guy from dear friends. They're like, you're the video guy, and that's before. Now it's super normal, but back then it wasn't. And so I was always like pushing the edge, and I wanted to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And so I would produce videos. I felt like I was late to the podcast game, but that was 3 or 4 years ago. I started my first podcast, and I thought I was late for it because I was ready. I had it ready to go. I had all the equipment purchased 3 years before that. And so, I've just learned just to start acting on things. If I see opportunity, just to act on it and do it for the long term. So kind of going back to some milestone moments. So that was a big one for me. Started that conference at FranChoice. I was known as a video guy. I learned about some people using some software there. And so I'm like, I bought the software and I spent a week just learning that software. It helped me automate stuff in the FranChoice business, which I don't do anymore. I'm not a broker anymore. I like people like you that are brokers. I like, people like you that are doing that are my heroes, and I'll send people to you guys. I'm like, go check out Dru, go check out some of our friends. They're the people that help you. So I don't do brokering anymore. But as I was, creating that podcast was a big thing for me. And then I was a franchisee wanting to do something a little bit more different around a personal brand. COVID hit. I had started a Facebook group. So COVID hit. And this is one of those kind of big shifts, something that happened and really kind of put me in a different direction. Let me back up. Even before that, 2 years before that, I was at a marketing conference called Traffic and Conversion in San Diego, and they had a mastermind there. And the mastermind was called War Room. I think it was 25 or 30,000 to be a part of it. And I'm like, I just bought it. I was, at the conferences at Franchoice, I was one of the top guys in the room. People would look to me for advice. I'm like at my top of my game there. And if I go into this mastermind where people are paying a lot of money, I'm going to be a nobody, and it's uncomfortable. And that's probably where I need to go. So that's what I did. So I joined that mastermind. And then 2 years later, everybody's my friend. I'm on the same level playing field with them. I know a bunch about marketing. COVID hit. I leaned on my relationships that I built there. I got Kevin Harrington to come on. Alex Hermosi, if you know who Alex Hermosi is, came into and he's really you should check out Alex Hermosi, his podcast. He's got a book called 100 M Offers. Amazing guy. I can't get him on my podcast anymore. He came on Roland Frazier, Bedros Cooley, and all these guys came on into the free Facebook group because I knew them and I asked them to come in and to help. And at that time, everybody was giving of their time. Like COVID hit, nobody knew what was going on. Everybody was scared. Everyone had an opinion. And so they would come in and help all of these people in there, from PPP loans to mindset to whatever. And then out of that, I thought, you know what? I've been wanting to start a mastermind. It's time to do it. So I went into the group and I said, hey, who wants more of this? Because I can't keep doing all of this for free because I got other things to do. And people raise their hands, and then Erik will start paying you to be a part of your group. And then so out of that, I had, I think 60 or 70 people started to pay a couple $100s a month.
Wow.
To be a part of my group. And that's called Grow, Franchise Tribe Grow. And then I have another one that's called Scale. And that one's currently $7,500 a year. And they just get more of me with that one. And they're full of a bunch of amazing franchisees. So I got that started out of COVID because I joined a mastermind. I had the idea for the mastermind. I had the confidence to start it. I knew how to do it. I grew it out of a Facebook group. And then I'm like, franchisors need this. And so I started to do some coaching on it with franchisors, again, group coaching, not one-on-one. And so I can do something once and it hits everybody. And then I build up a library of really good content or playbooks or like whatever you want to call it. Like for the guerrilla marketing session that we have coming up this week for franchisees, it's going to be a playbook on guerrilla marketing. It's part of a playbook for guerrilla marketing that all franchisees that are in the mastermind now or in the future will have. And then I started a mastermind with a good friend of mine called Justin Donald on passive investing. And that's $20,000 a year right now. And we've got about 40 or 50 members in that. And we bring passive deals to them and do all kinds of things. So all of that, Dru, started with the mastermind at the Traffic and Conversion Summit, me starting a Facebook group, starting a podcast, launching a mastermind, which turned into an investing mastermind. Now I have influence with franchisees. I've got influence with franchisors, and I have access to a bunch of capital because all my buddies are looking for deals to invest in. And so that gives you just recently since COVID, the events that were kind of aha moments or significant events in my life that kind of led to where I am today. And I wouldn't be able to ask for equity in companies. I wouldn't be able to advise companies if I didn't have all of those things happen.
That's amazing. All from being the video guy at a franchise conference, huh?
Yeah, with thick enough skin to own it.
Yeah, no, I know. But it's, but like, that's how, so when you were the video guy, like when you just started doing these videos, it sounds like, you knew that it was something that could have, obviously it could help the business.
Yep.
But did you ever envision that it would get to where it is today?
No way. I had no idea. There's no way. And I was scared to do it. A Facebook Live, like people do Facebook Lives all the time now, but like I remember I'm like, I need to do a Facebook Live. I don't want to do it. I need to do it. So I went on a hike behind my house up the mountain with my dog. And then I pulled out the iPhone. I'm like, I've got to do it. And I'm like, this is the best time because I'm hiking down this mountain in a rainstorm with my dog, jumping over trees, people are going to be paying attention to everything else besides what I say. So I pull out the iPhone. I need to go back and find this. I pull out the iPhone. Aaron Geary, my buddy Aaron Geary, Aaron was on. He's like the only guy that was on. I don't remember. I don't think anybody else joined, but he felt bad for me, so he was on there. But then I just got more and more comfortable. And the more that you're out there, the more success in quotes that you have online or in the public, the more people want to hate on you. Or if you weren't your authentic self, then you have to be this person that you're really not. And that's not a fun place to be. So I chose early on, I'm going to do it in my backyard on a hike because that's what I do. And, if you've ever been on a phone call with me or around me, you'll probably hear chickens in the background or a cow or horses or something like that, because that's my life in South Dakota. Even though I get to go do all these cool things, like that's my life. I misspell things on Facebook on my posts all the time. That's how you know if it's me or my content writers doing it. If it's misspelled, bad punctuation, it's probably me. But I just decided to own who I am, a business guy that's really a family guy first, that owns a business, lives in a small town of 10,000 people on an 80-acre ranch in the middle of nowhere in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And either people like it or they don't, but it's who I am.
So like a couple thoughts, like doing the videos is super awkward. Like I've tried to do them and I just, I struggle with it. But I think the other piece of that too is like, you had a lot of insight to share with the world. Yeah. Like people wanted to hear and still want to hear, obviously, but the beginning, like with what you've done in franchising, there's so much experience that people can learn from by listening to, whatever thoughts and insight you might share about certain stuff. Because I think especially for first timers, right, that are getting into franchising, like it's tough because it's a whole new ball game. It's a whole new business. It's a whole new dynamic. I think part of the success, because I watched a lot of that stuff. I learned a lot of stuff from it too. I got to think it's just the quality of the information you were putting out, and nobody was really doing it right at the time.
Nobody's doing it, and it was good quality. It wasn't quality from a production standpoint, or even probably from an ease of listening, but it helped me get better at speaking. It helped me get better in front of the camera. And here's what I thought too: if you're on a Facebook Live, you can't hide behind anything. Like you're out there talking, and if it's good content, good information, people are going to continue to listen to that. And that's what it was, because it was real. It was, and it still is. Like I just give the real stuff. Like here's something that I've been talking about more and more. If this makes the edit, I know that you liked it. If it doesn't, it gets kicked out.
Let's roll.
But I know, let's do it. I know franchisors, we all want franchisors to put an item 19 in their franchise disclosure document. Like we like it when they put item 19s in, because we get to validate that item 19 with franchisees that are doing it. The challenge comes when there are not a lot of franchisees that can validate what's in the item 19 because they haven't been open long enough, or the territories are different, very different types of territories, or it's a legacy location that there might be reasons why it's successful. Just maybe time might be the biggest factor in that item 19. If it's been around for 6 years and you are, you're trying to say, I'll be there in 2 years, that may or may not be true. So you can't validate with somebody that in an emerging brand that's been around for 6 years. So most people just, they do the best that they can, and they validate with franchisees that they're ramping up according to how they built out their budget. That's how most people do it. I've been thinking more and more that buyers should be looking at mom and pop businesses in the same industry to see if those margins add up. If someone says they have 30% margins, and yet the industry says 20% margins are really good, then spend time digging into why is that franchisor have 10% greater margin and a third greater margin than the average successful small business. And that's what I would spend my time in. Some of the best brands that I've been a part of in the salon suite industry was Solo Salons. I had an 8-figure exit in that brand, along with some mutual friends that were my partners at that time. Their item 19 was very accurate. And I've talked to some other people with inside, you get inside info. I get inside info into brands, and it's great because we can help people with that inside info. Even though we can't disclose it, we can help people with it. And I've heard some other brands recently, brands that you work with, Wes, brands that you probably send your candidates to, that said they have a very accurate, detailed item 19. So I don't care how detailed it is or how big it is or this. I want to know that it's accurate. And I've heard from people very much on the inside that this particular brand that you work with, Dru, is absolutely right on in terms of its item 19. And that's great. That's great franchising.
Yeah. But there's also the other side of that coin where you've seen the trumped up item 19s that are basically manufactured, right? Or they're misleading, like the way that what they call certain things like a net profit. Like there's one floating around right now that uses the word net profit, and it's not net profit. They conveniently leave out the entire labor line item in a P&L. And they're sitting there quoting these really healthy, quote unquote, net profit numbers. And unless you look at the details and you read through the notes and you read what they're actually disclosing, like you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't know it.
And to get more insider, because this is fun. I like these conversations. And that's why it's important to work with people like you, not just that have access to information, that have knowledge, that have experience like you, but they do what's right with that information like you. So I appreciate that. So the franchisor, their attorney probably advised them, a little risky putting in net profit in there. Like that's probably not something that you want to do. Or it's one attorney would probably say, not allowed to do that. We're not doing that. I'm not doing it for you. Another attorney is like, heck yeah, we'll do that. Risk is on you. Franchisors have a risk reward equation in their as they put together that item 19. There's risk that they can take and they're willing to accept. And some people don't take any risk at all. That's why some franchisors don't put anything in there, because they think that's the least risky thing to do. But yeah, item 19s, like the more that you can dive into that, the better. And just realize in general, you as a candidate are at a disadvantage talking to any franchisor. Like they know, like you said, they can spin the numbers, they can manufacture the numbers or spin the numbers however they want, and you don't know. Like they can be a magician with that stuff. Some are, and some absolutely aren't. But the buyer needs to not just like be super skeptical of everything, but just be aware, like they have the upper hand here. They know all the stuff that I don't know. So just do as much due diligence and get around people like you, Dru, that can lead them in the right direction. That's why I love you putting out podcasts, because I know you put out stuff that is just really helpful to buyers, and it's out there for the general public. That's what I liked when I was doing podcasts on buying franchises. Like I'm telling you the truth, and the more truth that you and I get out there, I think it's better for the whole franchise industry in general.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like it can be amazing. And for a lot of people, you get in with the right franchise, and the fun part, like, you've been involved in all these different types of businesses, right? But a lot of times, some of the right fits for right candidates that they can go on to have amazing success with are these businesses when they first learn about it, right? They're like, dude, you're crazy. And I'm like, dude, just have a call, right? Go in with an open mind, listen, learn. And if it's not, whatever, right? But like, that's the way it shakes out a lot of times in franchising is if you can come in with an open mind, the opportunities are endless. But if you do, as a candidate, if you do have, kind of guardrails on your mindset in terms of like what you're open to and how you're going to look at these businesses, that can that's a risky thing to do as well, because it, puts the blinders on. And if you get, if you fall in love with the widget, but don't validate the actual business model, then it could be trouble. So there's a lot of layers to this whole thing.
Yeah. I love keeping an open mind. I was just talking about this with Lane Fisher and Jeff Hearn on a podcast, on a session. And franchisors don't keep an open mind. Like franchisors, we were just talking about, had some conversations last week, the three of us did with some franchisors, and they thought big territories were better. That was a value prop. That was a point of differentiation for the franchisor. Bigger territories aren't like, that's not a value prop. Like sometimes you get bigger territories because it's an emerging brand. That's an advantage as a franchisee, but that's not what I'm looking for. This franchisor, last year, they thought they would be crushing it in franchise development. They've sold 0 in the last 12 months. And I was talking to him. He's like, man, it was a lot harder than I thought selling these franchises. I had a list of people, like 20 or 30 people that said they're ready to buy as soon as you franchise it. And then it came time to buy the franchise and everyone was gone, So they need to keep an open mind, like just because they think as a franchisee that bigger is better, it's a bigger territory, a bigger this, a bigger that is better. It doesn't mean that it is. So franchisors need to keep an open mind. And then people that are buying a franchise need to keep an open mind. The things that they think they want in a franchise many times are the things that they really don't want. Or they think because a brand says they're semi-absentee, are they really semi-absentee? And that's where you come in and you'd be like, this is what semi-absentee means to this particular brand. This one over here really doesn't. They say they are absolutely not semi-absentee, but they allow their franchisees to do the exact same thing. And that's even in validation, like how to validate different types of ownership in different brands. If you've never done it before, you don't really know how to do it. And that's, again, working with you, people will understand how to validate, not just check it off on their list, but keeping an open mind. I'm so glad that I did that. I bought 7 different brands. I've had 2 losers, by the way. Not everything I touch has turned to gold. And that was probably you had a question like, what are some of the big moments in your life that have kind of set you on a different track? Once I realized I wasn't a magic franchise outer, I started to, I think I was a better consultant. I was better on my videos. I was better on my podcast. I was more empathetic to people that weren't doing very well. And so that's a really good thing that happened to me, is getting punched in the gut, kicked in the face, whatever you want to call it, but losing a lot of money because I did things. I was overconfident in my own ability to, just because the brand had some weakness in these other areas, I thought my success as a franchisee historically would overcome that. And it absolutely did not. Or the other thing that really was a challenge with that is I thought a successful brand, they were doing well, but it needed more of my full-time involvement, and I wasn't giving that. And so I didn't vet that out or give enough weight to that. And I think we're seeing more and more of that. And you could probably, I'm sure you help your candidates with that, to just give them accurate expectations of time involvement, what semi-absentee really means, or just because these numbers are big in item 19, like what's the owner's involvement in that particular franchise. So lots to talk about there.
I've had a similar experience, and it's humbling, right? Like you think your britches are bigger than they really are, and but if you can embrace that experience and that investment, or we'll call it the investment, but really losing some money, but there's a lot to learn from it, right? Like, and that can help on the next deals, help you vet, help you get sharper on all that kind of stuff. But it's also like this humbling, and I think franchise companies, until a franchise company has been humbled, it's like, if you haven't been humbled yet, I don't know if I can help you, right? Because like you think everything is this easy, and maybe you've set it up to be a success, but there's typically something that happens when a franchise company gets humbled, and how they respond to it says a lot about who that company is, and what the ride's going to be like. So a lot of times,
because
franchise
somebody can
sales,
get humbled, a franchisor can get humbled, and yet not have any humility coming out of that. Like from the outside, it's like, you just got humbled. You did all this stuff wrong. Your franchisees are failing. You did your territories all wrong. You did this wrong. Nobody's interested in buying you because of how you set it up. But they could be like, just not really see it as like, oh my gosh, I really made some mistakes and I should have course corrected earlier. And then, especially at Front Street Equity Partners, we are looking for brands with founders that are humble, founders that will implement fast and want to learn. Because if you don't have that, I'm not going to be an advisor, or we're not going to bring you on at Front Street Equity, because we're not going to have impact. And so, like some of these, I had people that I spoke with, young brands at the Springboard conference. It's really cool concepts, but the founders they're just like, I know too much already. And that I know you guys think you know what you're doing, but you really don't. Even in the franchisor mastermind, I charge $2,000 a month, which is a steal. Sounds like a lot of money if you're just thinking of an expense, but the value that they get it's a steal for them. I'll coach them. I'll do Ask Me Anything sessions. And some of them are just like, it's too expensive for me right now. Or, and if they say that, or they're just not into it, I'm like, great. What's your goal? Go for it. Because I know they'll be back in a year or 2 years. The price will be increased for it, but they'll see the value. I can't tell somebody the value. They have to see that value, or they're not going to stick around for very long, and they're not going to learn, and they're not going to implement.
Yeah. And it's not an expense. It's an investment, right? Like that's like, if you're looking at it like an expense on the P&L, then yeah, probably not a fit. Right. But
you and I could take any brand and easily save them or make them $24,000 a year by having 1 hour a month with us. You or I, because of your background and my background, we could easily help them get the right franchisee that should be a buyer that is not going to buy from them, or help them avoid getting a bad franchisee. Easy. But if they don't see that, like they'll never be a part of the mastermind. They'll never start making, they'll never be able to scale their business how they are dreaming about scaling it.
Yeah. And it's like, I was thinking about this the other day, because I was gonna write something up about it. Like, for these early emerging franchise companies that have aggressive goals, if they make the wrong decision, it can set them back years, right? Now, if they can get connected with the right people who can navigate them, because they don't know any different, right? But if they don't come in with this, hey, we've got to realize we don't know what this franchise journey is going to be like. We want to lean into people that have been through the path. Like, there's this one company that I know you've heard about them. They were talking to a particular FSO that had a unique strategy that was unconventional, we'll call it. And they were about ready to sign the paperwork. And then they randomly got connected with me because of somebody saw one of those stinking videos that you inspired me to do. And we sat in a room for 4 hours, and I just basically just gave them, 15 years of experience in 4 hours. And they were like, okay, there's this whole other piece to this thing. If they hadn't at least listened to or got connected to hear about what the other options could be, I mean, they would be nowhere near what they are right now. So it's like, it's these delicate little things that and it's all about who you get connected with, right? Like it's so who true. You're getting advice from and what that advice is.
So I was thinking, this is, we're like, God, they don't know what they don't know, and they should be doing this, and we could save them this, and they could be worth so much more in a faster period of time, and have X amount more enterprise value if they would just listen to us. Yet, so I go back and I look at it from their perspective. They're like, how do I know you have what it takes, Erik, or Dru, or whoever they're talking with? And there's so many different ways that they can do it. They can give up equity, which they would do with us, or they would pay a lot of money, which they would do at others. And there's not a right or wrong. It's whatever's right for them at that time. That's why it's beautiful, because there's multiple different really good brands, really good people like we are at Front Street, but there are other really good brands out there doing some really cool things that have a different model than we do. And we're all friends. Like, we all know each other. We all hang out together. But that's the truth. But then there are, how do they know as a brand, boy, Erik's group and, Kurt's group and Zink's group and Carrie and all these guys, like, how do they know that they're good? Because they don't. Now, there's a bunch of bad ones out there. There's a bunch of them that are just going to take their money, give no strategic advisory, not be really helpful. They have a poor reputation in the industry, but they're really good at selling the brand. Right. And there's some out there with very poor reputations. We will not call anybody out, but like, do your due diligence. But I think bringing on people that are smarter than you as an advisory board or something like that is a really good thing for these young emerging brands.
Because the exit is significant, and it seems to be getting bigger and bigger as
it's insane. So I was just, Jeff and I were talking about this, Jeff Herr, and this isn't public information. It's not private. I can talk about it because we're not talking about any specific brand or industry or anything. There's a company on the market. Let's say they got sold for $100 million back in the day, many years ago. And now they're back on the market. Rumor is $400, $500, $600 million for this particular brand. And they were bought. Like the deal was as good as done. And then pulled out. The big private equity company pulled out and said, we're no longer doing this. And the reason is because we're no longer doing consumer-based brands. We're going more business to business. So that one thing changed everything for that. Now they're back on the market, but there's just, they can't do anything about that for themselves, but it just shows you the magnitude of like a brand selling for 500 million, 600 million. Like if they would have set it up wrong and didn't pull the right levers over the last handful of years, they wouldn't be sitting at 600 million. Because I know some of their competitors are less than $100 million today, but it's because they were introduced to the right people. They made really good decisions along the way. They took their chips off the table. They brought in better people. They've made some strategic acquisitions, some strategic things, and now they're looking at just call it a half a billion dollar valuation. But they did things right from the very beginning, and what they didn't do right, they changed along the way. And again, I know a handful of their competitors, and they're nowhere close to that. Got to pull the right levers.
Yeah. And make sure you have happy and profitable franchise owners, right? Like fundamentally, like if you ever lose sight of that as a franchise company, then there ain't no getting around that. There's no way.
100%. So this brand I know has happy, successful franchisees. So I'm so glad you brought that point up, because like they wouldn't be where they are without that. And private equity cares about that. So sometimes as franchisees, we get really disgruntled with our franchisor, and we're like, oh, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. But good franchisors know that they need happy, successful franchisees, or they can have a good exit, but not a great one. A great one occurs with happy, successful franchisees that have opportunity to expand. Private equity absolutely cares about the health of the franchisee.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a symbiotic, ecosystem, right? Like it's all got to flow together. And that's why validation, we all preach, talk to the franchise owners, and there's a way to go about it, but it just blows my mind how many people skip that step in buying a franchise. It's crazy.
I know. Because we think we know. Why do you think people skip that step? Why do you think people skip doing deep enough franchisee validation?
That's a great question. I think it kind of goes back to the humility piece of it. People think that they know more than they really do when they're getting involved in, especially if they've never owned a business before. And it's a lot of work, man. Like it's not easy putting in the time and reaching out to people on a cold basis to have conversations with them. So those are two things that come to my mind. What do you think?
So I think so. It is a lot of work. We think that we know better, or we talk to a good one and we're like, oh, this is good. We talk to another good and we think it's really good, or we're just not asking the right questions. And I think some people don't validate because they don't really know where to start, or how to start the conversation, how to ask the right questions, and just even how to build rapport with a franchisee on the phone. Like how do you do that? And you don't want to be a bother to them because they're in their business and they're getting a bunch of these validation calls. So I think I'm sure you do a good job at this. I did an okay job at this, but just helping candidates with validation. Like here's a bunch of questions that you should ask, or here's some topics that you should be asking about, making it really easy for them to pick up the phone, send the email, send the text message. I almost think, just as we're having this conversation, I would probably have a text set up that says, here's how to text them. here, who you like, help them set that up, or leave a voicemail script for somebody, or an email script, so they can do it. So it's really easy and frictionless for them to initiate those conversations. Kind of like working out. Once you get to the gym, once you get on the bike, once you get on the treadmill, you can stick around for 5, he starts out as 2 minutes, but 20 minutes goes by pretty fast. Once you start doing that, you start to understand the value in that. So I just think more direction would probably be helpful as well. And I think here's the other thing. Some people are so enamored by the brand, the leadership, the product, the thing, that they just don't think that they need to do it. And they're like, this brand has amazing leadership. They have success over here, success over there. And they don't validate, does that prior success as a franchisor over here translate to current success at current franchise? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But they don't think about connecting those types of dots. So they might just be validating the wrong thing.
Yeah. A lot of layers to this, for sure. All right, man. Well, I've enjoyed it. So what's next for you? You got all kinds of stuff going on. What's next?
I want to have the most amount of impact with the least amount of work.
I love it.
And just really, part of that's understanding the own levers that I can pull in different franchise organizations, being a part of brands where I can have a significant impact on them. And without just tying it to my hours. And I've seen that happen, and it's happening more and more now with a technology company, software company that I'm getting ready to be an advisor for. I want to continue doing all of that, Dru, but I want to start allowing other people to see opportunities to invest in franchisors. Just about listed on Angel List with my friend Justin Donald. He's a lifestyle investor, so he and I are going to have a syndication on, for lack of a better term, right now on Angel List. And so I've got some things cooking, from being able to invest in different area developments to franchisors, things like that. So I don't know how all of that's going to pan out, but that's something that's cooking.
Cool. I figured you had something interesting cooking. That's awesome. All right, man. Well, so if people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
Go to Scalable Franchise, scalablefranchise.com, or Franchise Secrets. Either way, you'll kind of get into my world, or check out the Franchise Secrets Facebook group. That's a fun group. Don't spam people in there. You'll get kicked out real fast. To be a fly on the wall or participate as much as you want, franchisesecretsgroup.com, and that'll take you right there.
Good stuff. I'm part of the group, and there's a lot of good questions, a lot of learning that can happen from other people asking questions. So awesome, man. Well, thank you for hopping on here. I enjoyed it.
Dru, it's been a pleasure, man. I'm so glad you are producing the content that you're producing, the podcast, the videos, just giving out there. So you are one of a handful of consultants that I trust, and I know that knows their stuff, and you've been on all sides of franchising. So keep it up, man.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, my friend. Have a good one.
All right. See you, buddy.
That's a wrap. Hope you found a nugget or two in there that can help you on your franchise journey. And if you ever want to talk franchising, reach out to me anytime.